Mr. James, a wealthy millionaire, had always believed that he knew every corner of his vast ranch. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky with shades of orange and red, as he drove down the long dusty path in his sleek black car. He had come to the ranch for a quiet weekend, hoping to relax and escape the city's noise. But something unusual caught his eye, a small house tucked away behind a grove of trees. It was strange. He had never noticed this house before. It looked old, with peeling paint and a small garden that seemed barely maintained. Smoke rose from the chimney, which meant someone was home. Curiosity mixed with concern. Who could be living here? He wondered. He had never allowed anyone to settle on his property without permission. He parked his car and walked toward the house. The wooden steps creaked under his weight. He knocked on the door gently. For a few moments, there was no answer. Then, the door opened slowly. Standing there was a woman, tired, but her eyes were sharp and alert. She was a single mother, clearly exhausted from caring for children. Yet she carried herself with dignity. Her name was Lisa. She had triplets, 3 tiny children under the age of 3 clinging to her skirts. She looked at Mr. James with a mixture of fear and caution. Who are you?" she asked softly. "I'm Mr. James," he replied. "I own this ranch. I didn't know anyone lived here." Lisa's hands trembled slightly. I live here, I mean. I have no other place to go," she stammered. The children tugged at her dress, and she bent to pick them up one by one. The sight was both heartbreaking and inspiring, a viring, single mother struggling to care for 3 small children, alone. Mr. James looked around the small house. It was modest, almost bare. The furniture was old, some of it broken. The floorboards creaked with every step. Toys were scattered across the tiny living room. A small stove in the corner had a pot simmering, and the aroma of simple food filled the room. Something about the scene unsettled him. How had she survived here? How had she managed to keep her children fed and clothed in such a remote place? And why hadn't she come to him for help before? He noticed the children, now 3 little faces, wide-eyed and innocent. They stared at him, unsure whether to smile or cry. One of them, a girl with curly hair, reached out a tiny hand toward Mr. James. He knelt and took it gently. The children's trust was immediate, innocent, and pure. But there was a strange tension in the air. Lisa seemed wary of him, as if expecting him to judge her or turn her away. Mr. James felt a pang of guilt. He was a rich man, used to controlling everything around him. Yet here, in this small house, he was powerless. He couldn't imagine the hardship she had faced. Before he could speak, he noticed something unusual on the floor near the stove, a letter addressed to him. Curious, he picked it up. The envelope was old, the handwriting elegant but familiar. He glanced at Lisa, who seemed to freeze. You know about that?" he asked softly. Lisa shook her head, her eyes wide with fear. I don't know what it is," she said, her voice trembling. Mr. James felt a chill run down his spine. Why was there a letter here for him, in a house he had never known existed on his ranch? Who had put it here? And most importantly, why was this woman living here with 3 children, all alone? As the sun dipped below the horizon, Mr. James realized that this unexpected discovery was only the beginning. Something about this house, this woman, and these children was strangely familiar, yet he could not place it. Questions raced through his mind, each one more urgent than the last. He looked at Lisa, then at the children, and whispered to himself, "How did they end up here? And what am I supposed to do now?" The ranch, once peaceful and predictable, suddenly felt like the start of a mystery, one that would change everything. After the strange discovery of the letter, Mr. James could not shake off the feeling that there was more to this small house than met the eye. He stood in the doorway, watching Lisa juggle the 3 children. One was crying, another tugged at her skirt, and the third clung to her back. Despite the chaos, Lisa's calm determination was striking. Every move she made showed experience, patience, and a strength that left him silently impressed. I can help," Mr. James said, trying to break the tension. "I have resources, food, clothes, anything you need." Lisa froze. She looked at him with a mixture of suspicion and wariness. "Why would you help me? You don't even know me," she whispered. Her voice carried exhaustion, but there was also an unshakable pride in it. Mr. James took a step closer, keeping his voice soft. "I know that doesn't matter. You're living here alone with 3 children. That's not fair. Let me at least try." Lisa hesitated, unsure whether to trust him. She studied his expression, searching for any sign of judgment or insincerity. But all she saw was concern, pure, unpretentious concern. Slowly, she nodded, allowing him to step inside. The house was small, no bigger than a large cabin. A thin layer of dust covered the wooden floor, but it was clean enough. There was little furniture, just a worn sofa, a small table, and a few chairs. The walls were bare except for a faded calendar and a couple of crayon drawings taped up by the children. The stove in the corner steamed gently, and the aroma of a simple stew filled the room. Mr. James crouched to the children's level. "Hello there," he said gently. The kids looked at him cautiously. One boy peeked from behind Lisa's leg, while the little girl, still curious, took a step forward. "Do you like your house?" he asked with a soft smile. The children exchanged shy glances. They didn't answer, but their wide eyes and hesitant movements told him enough. He could see how much they depended on Lisa, how much love she poured into them despite the difficult circumstances. Then, he noticed something unusual. One of the triplets, a boy, had a tiny birthmark on his hand that looked exactly like one Mr. James had seen in old photographs of his own family. A chill ran down his spine. Could it be a coincidence? Or was this more than just a random encounter? Lisa moved closer to him, noticing his gaze. "What is it?" she asked cautiously. "Nothing," he replied, though his heart raced. He didn't want to scare her, not yet. Instead, he decided to focus on understanding her life. He asked about her daily routines, how she managed the children alone, and what challenges she faced. Lisa spoke openly, revealing her struggles with finances, exhaustion, and isolation. Yet, in her words, he could hear pride and resilience. A refusal to give up despite the hardships. As the conversation continued, Mr. James noticed small details, how she laughed when the children played, how she comforted them when they cried, and how carefully she prepared their meal despite having so little. Each gesture spoke volumes about her character, but the letter still sat on the table. A silent reminder of mysteries, yet unsolved. Mr. James felt a growing connection. Not just to Lisa, but to the children as well. There was something about their faces, their movements, their laughter. It all felt strangely familiar. Tugging at a memory he couldn't yet place. As the evening shadows lengthened, he realized that this encounter was no accident. Something or someone had brought him here. And somehow, Lisa and her children were at the center of it. The small house was quiet now, except for the soft breathing of the triplets sleeping in their tiny beds. Mr. James sat at the small table, staring at the letter he had found earlier. Its envelope had been old, almost fragile, and the handwriting was elegant, careful, and unmistakably familiar. He carefully opened it, his fingers trembling slightly. The letter began with words that caught him off guard. "To the one who should have known. They need you. They are yours." His eyes widened. "Yours? What does this mean?" he whispered, his mind racing. Lisa noticed his reaction and sat down beside him, her expression cautious. "You found the letter," she said softly. Her voice carried a strange mix of fear and relief. I didn't know if I should show it to anyone. I was afraid." Mr. James looked at her, confused. "Afraid of what?" Lisa took a deep breath. Afraid that you wouldn't believe me. Or that you'd leave. But I think it's time you know the truth. She began slowly, carefully choosing her words. She explained that years ago, before she had the triplets, she had known a man, someone who had changed her life. Someone who had been important, but left unexpectedly. She hadn't told anyone at the time, and circumstances had forced her to raise her children alone. Her voice shook as she continued. The children. They were born with a connection to you. I didn't know if it was right to tell you, but they have your features. Your eyes, your smile. And now, seeing you here, it feels like fate. Mr. James felt a shiver run down his spine. His heart pounded as he looked at the sleeping triplets, then back at Lisa. He remembered moments from his past, old photographs, names he hadn't thought of in years. The resemblance was impossible to ignore. One child's small hands, the curve of their lips, the way they laughed, it was all strangely familiar. Are you saying, he began, his voice barely a whisper, that these children are mine? Lisa nodded slowly. I didn't want to believe it at first, but the evidence. It's all here. And the letter. Someone knew you had to see it. Someone wanted you to find us. Mr. James leaned back, trying to process the revelation. His mind was a whirlwind of emotions, shock, disbelief, awe, and an unfamiliar warmth in his chest. How could this be real? Could he have unknowingly been connected to these children all along? He stood up and walked to the beds. The children stirred slightly, sensing his presence. He knelt down, looking at each of their faces. For a moment, the world outside the small house ceased to exist. His eyes softened, and a deep, unexplainable bond began to form. Lisa watched him, her heart racing. She had been alone for so long, struggling to raise her triplets in secrecy. She had feared judgment, rejection, and abandonment. But now, seeing the change in Mr. James, the genuine concern, the shock, and the tenderness, she felt a cautious hope. The letter had not just revealed a secret, it had changed the direction of all their lives. Mr. James realized that he could no longer ignore the connection. No matter how unexpected or overwhelming it felt, a sense of responsibility and protectiveness surged within him. These were not just strangers in a small house, they were a part of him. And now he had a choice: walk away or step into their lives and face the consequences of a past he had long forgotten. The night had settled over the ranch, and the small house was silent except for the soft breaths of the sleeping triplets. Mr. James sat at the wooden table, the letter still in his hand, his mind racing. The words he had read earlier replayed over and over. They need you. They are yours. The reality of it was sinking in slowly, like a stone dropping into deep water, creating ripples he could not ignore. Lisa watched him from across the room. She had expected a strong reaction, perhaps anger, disbelief, or even rejection. But what she saw instead was something she had not anticipated: a man struggling with emotions he could barely name. Shock, fear, wonder, and something softer, almost like recognition. Mr. James, she said gently, breaking the silence, you can't deny it. Look at them. Do you not see it? He looked at the triplets again, their tiny faces peaceful in sleep. And then he saw the unmistakable resemblance. One of the boys had the same almond-shaped eyes he had seen in old photographs of his younger self. The girl had the same delicate curve of her lips. Even the way they held their hands reminded him of gestures from his own childhood. A sudden, undeniable realization hit him. These children, his heart pounding, might really be his. He remembered the past, flashes of memory long buried. Years ago, there had been a relationship he thought had ended quietly, leaving only memories. Could it be that this woman, this resilient single mother, had been a part of that life? Could these triplets be the result of a connection he had forgotten or never fully understood? Lisa, sensing his confusion, leaned closer. I didn't want to tell you before. I was afraid you wouldn't believe me, or that you'd turn away. But the truth is, they need you. They've always needed you." Mr. James felt a lump in his throat. How could this be happening? His mind swirled with questions. Why hadn't he known? Who sent the letter? And why now, after all these years, had fate or someone brought him here? He slowly walked to the children, each step heavy with emotion. One of the triplets stirred, opening his eyes and staring at him. Mr. James knelt down, holding out his hands. The boy reached for him, curiosity and trust shining in his eyes. At that moment, the invisible barrier between them seemed to dissolve. There was no doubt something deep, unexplainable, and binding connected them. Lisa watched silently, her heart pounding. She had spent years protecting these children, shielding them from a world she feared would not understand. And now, here was the man their father standing in their home, grappling with the reality she had carried alone. She could see the internal struggle in his eyes, the shock slowly melting into care, concern, and something warmer, something human. Mr. James finally spoke, his voice low but steady. "I don't know how this happened, how I didn't know, but I see them. I see you. I see everything now." He paused, taking a deep breath, steadying himself against the surge of emotions. "I need to understand. I need to know everything, and I need to be part of their lives. If you'll let me." Lisa's eyes filled with tears. She had feared this moment, but it was also the one she had secretly hoped for. For years, she had wondered if someone would step into their lives, someone who could love them and protect them as fiercely as she had. And now, against all odds, that person was here. The sun rose slowly over the ranch, casting golden light through the small windows of Lisa's house. Mr. James had spent the night awake, unable to sleep, thinking about the revelation from yesterday. The truth was undeniable now. These children were connected to him in ways he could not ignore. Yet, understanding it and embracing it were two very different things. Lisa moved quietly around the small kitchen, preparing breakfast for the triplets. The children were already awake, giggling and tugging at her legs, eager for the day to begin. Mr. James watched silently from the doorway, feeling both awe and uncertainty. This was her world, the world she had built alone, and he had stepped into it uninvited. "I can help," he said softly, stepping inside. His voice startled the children for a moment, but Lisa placed a reassuring hand on one of them. "They need time to adjust," she murmured, a small tired smile on her face. He nodded. "I understand. I want to be part of their lives. I don't want to frighten them, but I want to help." Lisa studied him carefully, noticing the genuine concern in his eyes. She wanted to trust him, wanted to believe that he could be someone who would stay. But after years of struggle, she had learned that trust was not given lightly. It had to be earned. The day began with small tests of connection. Mr. James helped with simple tasks, changing diapers, preparing food, and playing with the triplets. At first, the children were cautious, staring at him with wide eyes, unsure if this tall man with kind hands was friend or stranger. Slowly, through gentle smiles and careful patience, he began to break through their walls. A small giggle from the little girl when he made a funny face was like a ray of sunlight cutting through the clouds. Lisa watched, a mixture of relief and concern in her eyes. Could she let him into their lives completely? Could she allow herself to trust a man who had been absent, whose presence now brought both hope and uncertainty? As the afternoon sun poured through the windows, Mr. James noticed something he had not expected. The triplets' innate resemblance to him was undeniable. One of the boys reached for him, recognizing something familiar in his presence. The sight was overwhelming. He knelt and let the child climb onto his lap. The bond, though new, felt strangely natural, as if it had existed long before this moment. Suddenly, a loud cough erupted from the youngest child. Mr. James' heart skipped a beat. The little boy's face was flushed, and he was struggling to breathe. Lisa's eyes widened in panic. She scooped him up and rushed to the small bedroom. Without hesitation, Mr. James followed. He grabbed a cloth and helped her tend to the child, his hands surprisingly sure. "It's okay," he said, his voice calm but urgent. "We'll take care of him." The crisis tested everything. Lisa watched him, her fear mingled with awe. Here was a man who had just discovered he might be a father, and yet, he acted without hesitation. He did not judge, he did not question, he simply helped. By the time the sun began to set, the child's fever had broken slightly, and the triplets were finally resting again. Lisa sank onto a chair, exhausted, and looked at Mr. James with a mixture of gratitude and disbelief. You really mean it, don't you?" she whispered. He nodded, kneeling beside her. "I do. I don't know how this happened, or why it took me so long to find you, but I won't walk away now. Not from them, not from you." The next morning, the ranch was quiet, almost deceptively peaceful. The triplets were playing in the small yard, their laughter echoing through the trees. Lisa stood nearby, watching them carefully, a mixture of relief and lingering worry etched on her face. She had begun to see a change, not just in Mr. James, but in herself. The walls she had built around her heart were starting to crumble, yet the fear of being hurt again lingered. Mr. James stepped forward, holding a small basket of toys he had brought for the children. "I thought they might like these," he said softly. The triplets ran toward him, their small hands grabbing the colorful toys. Lisa's heart swelled at the sight, but she couldn't help noticing the hesitation in their eyes. Trust, she knew, was earned slowly. As the day went on, Mr. James proved his presence again and again. He helped with chores, fed the children, and played games that made them giggle uncontrollably. He laughed with them, not just at them, and Lisa realized that he was beginning to belong in their lives. She felt a spark of hope, a tiny, fragile hope that perhaps things could truly change. But the turning point came unexpectedly. One of the boys, the youngest, suddenly started coughing violently. His face turned red, and then pale. Lisa's heart skipped a beat. She rushed to him, panic rising. "He's burning up!" she cried, clutching the child to her chest. Mr. James didn't hesitate. He grabbed the boy gently, placing him in the shade, and checked his breathing. "We need to get him to a doctor," he said firmly. Lisa nodded, tears welling in her eyes. She had been alone for so long in emergencies like this. Now she realized she wasn't alone anymore. They hurried to the nearest clinic. The triplets bundled together in Mr. James' car. The boy was scared, but the presence of both Lisa and Mr. James reassured him. At the clinic, the doctor examined him quickly. "Fever, minor infection. He'll be fine with rest and medicine," the doctor said. Relief washed over Lisa. And she glanced at Mr. James. He looked at her, exhaustion on his face. But there was something else, something that made her chest tighten. Concern, care, genuine love. On the drive back, Lisa finally spoke. I didn't know if I could trust anyone," she said quietly. "But today I see that you really mean it. That you're here for them, and for me." Mr. James reached for her hand gently, holding it. "I know I came late. I know I missed years. But I promise you, I won't leave. I want to be part of their lives and part of yours. If you let me." Lisa's eyes filled with tears, but this time, they were not just from fear. They were tears of hope, of relief, and of cautious joy. For the first time in years, she felt the possibility of a real family. One where the burdens could be shared, where love could grow, and where the children could thrive. Back at the small house, Mr. James helped her put the children to bed. As they lay there, sleeping peacefully, Lisa and Mr. James sat together in quiet reflection. The bond that had begun with uncertainty and fear had now solidified through action, care, and shared responsibility. The ranch was quiet in the early morning light. But inside Lisa's small house, a sense of warmth and hope filled the air. The triplets were playing on the floor, their laughter bright and unrestrained. A sound that once would have felt impossible to hear in this modest home. Mr. James watched them with a smile, kneeling to hand a toy to the little girl. Their eyes met for a moment, and in that simple exchange, he felt a connection stronger than words could describe. Lisa entered the room with a tray of breakfast, her heart lighter than it had been in years. The events of the past days had changed everything. Mr. James had proven himself not just through words, but through actions, through care, concern, and a willingness to be present when it mattered most. For the first time, she felt she could trust someone completely. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice soft. "For everything. For being here." Mr. James shook his head gently. "No thanks needed. They are my children, and I won't abandon them or you again." There was a pause, a quiet moment where the past seemed to melt away, leaving only the possibilities of the future. Lisa looked at him, realizing that this was more than just a reunion, it was a second chance. Not just for the children, but for herself as well. Over the next few hours, they worked together to tidy the small home. Mr. James moved furniture, repaired a broken chair, and even cleaned the small garden. While Lisa prepared lunch, the children watched, fascinated by the unusual teamwork. They laughed at Mr. James' clumsy attempts to plant flowers, and he laughed along with them, feeling a sense of belonging he had never experienced before. As the afternoon sun poured through the windows, Mr. James took Lisa aside. "I want you to know," he said carefully, "I can offer more than just money. I can offer support, protection, and love. I want to be part of your lives fully. Will you let me?" Lisa's eyes filled with tears, but this time they were not tears of fear. They were tears of relief, hope, and quiet happiness. "Yes," she whispered. I trust you. And I think the children do too." In the following days, Mr. James arranged for the family to move into a larger, safer home on the ranch, one where the triplets could run freely and Lisa could feel secure. He also helped provide resources for Lisa to pursue her dreams, supporting her while respecting her independence. One evening, as the family sat together on the porch watching the sunset, Mr. James held the triplets close. They cuddled into him, giggling and whispering their tiny secrets. Lisa sat beside him, leaning her head against his shoulder. The ranch, once a place of solitude and emptiness, now felt alive, filled with laughter, love, and hope. "I never imagined life could change this much," Lisa murmured. "Neither did I," Mr. James replied. "But sometimes the most unexpected moments lead to the greatest blessings." The bond between them had grown through challenges, fear, and revelation. What had started as a shocking discovery had become the foundation of a new family, one built on trust, care, and unshakable love.